Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
We've got a lot of science to dig into today, Morgan. We're going to put on our physician's coats, right?
Oh, today's going to be a very interesting day. We got a ton of stuff to cover. As the folks at home and at work might expect, listening online and over the airwaves, you might expect that we would have a ton of things to cover. And I'll tell you, there was some interesting news that came out over the weekend, and all my friends were abuzz about it because all of a sudden we're having some second thoughts. So we thought we'd take a quick look back at, what about this we hear in the news? There's been 160 or 180,000 deaths from the coronavirus, or as even I have started calling it, COVID-19, a word that I hate with a passion.
Because of the number attached, right?
No, I just hate the name, COVID.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't like.
It's
I don't
creepy.
like. Yeah,
it's creepy.
It's
all
creepy.
right.
I don't like those mashup names. I like coronavirus. But
Well,
I know, Roxanne, we're going to take a quick look back at
Yes.
this and a story that even you sent me over the weekend that was really making the rounds because, it's fascinating when you take a look at the fact that the vast majority of the COVID deaths, the alleged COVID deaths, had some other issue going on. And it's huge.
Well, this was a very quiet update from the CDC this week. I shouldn't say quiet, but they didn't come out and have a spokesperson that I'm aware of that was on any sort of news segment, and you don't see it as much in the mainstream media, but they showed that only 6% of the 161,000 cases actually perished just from having COVID and nothing else.
Wow.
And of course, when you look further into that 6%, then you're really going to see the age discrepancy, and you're going to see that sad as it is, the much older population and infants as well.
So
Less
round
than 1
numbers.
years old. So round numbers, less than 10,000.
Wow. So
the-
of all, and this is nationwide?
Nationwide. This is on, this is not propaganda. This is not someone's opinion. This is go to the CDC website, pull it up, look at all the tables. You can see it breaks it down who had pneumonia, who had COVID with pneumonia, everything you could possibly want to know as far as statistics go. So the other 94%, not only did they have one other comorbidity factor, on average, they had 2.5 other comorbidity factors. Each person in that 94% category. 2.5 other factors, not just heart disease and COVID.
And what is comorbidity? Does that mean something else that can also kill you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they already had, on average, they had 2.5, which obviously nobody has a half, but we're talking about an average here.
Right.
2.5 other
2 to 3.
conditions that can kill you. Huh.
And so this was startling information. One of my physicians, he said this exact thing. I called him yesterday. I said, boy, I read the CDC report and you were on it. You were right on it. You said it. Tragically, this goes after the week. This kind of, he said that back in March. This is the kind of virus that if you have a lot of ailments, or not ailments, but, conditions, that's what's going to, it's not going to be good for you to get that.
Right.
As far as the general population, it seems to be that these numbers are less. I've got to tell you a story I saw on a particular news. I should say I heard because I was walking in and out of the room. But the story was all about President Trump tweeting that information from the CDC. And his tweet, I walked away, so I don't know if it was flagged or if it was taken down or if the story was this tweet that Trump did and how it was taken down from Twitter. Then they casually went into, it was about this 6% information that the CDC released. But they don't tell you that it's accurate information. So if you are a casual observer, you're hearing that story and think, oh boy, Trump, they put it in a fashion that President Trump is tweeting false information.
Right.
And he was tweeting what the CDC.gov says.
And you listen and you just conclude that, well, this is the reason a couple of 100,000 people have died from COVID-19 because our president won't take it seriously.
Right.
When what he's actually doing is he's actually telling you the accurate data, the accurate information. And these are things that doctors and scientists and other people have been trying to say for months, that this particular virus, if you're young and healthy, by and large, you're going to be okay. And in fact, most people that get it, because we look at the numbers off the testing, and it's 6 million cases I think we've had,
right?
Maybe 8 million. I don't honestly. I don't keep track of the numbers that closely because I'm over it, and I can see the trends in the numbers and the trends in deaths and everything else. And I can see that the coronavirus is on a huge downtrend. And I'm just ready. I'm just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up and we can get rid of wearing all these masks all the time.
We're never going to use the term again, hindsight is 2020. It's just too ironic.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was going to use that term, I would say we might look back if we could do it again and say, maybe this is something that needs to run through the communities and get herd immunity because you want the strong people to get it.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be affected. And everybody else who has any sort of, has one condition, that's, stay inside, protect those people, let them work from home, do everything you can to keep them safe.
I need to get a cow effect so that every time we have to talk about herd immunity, I can play that. Because, another term. There's so many terms that have come out. Well, they haven't really come out, but so many terms we've started using in common parlance in 2020.
Language.
Yeah. Now hindsight is 2020 or 20. Hopefully 2020 will be hindsight fairly soon. But we've also got the new normal. We've got herd immunity, all these terms that I absolutely despise. But that's some very interesting information for the folks at home. It's right in line, like you said, Roxanne, with the same thing that we've been telling people. And it's not like we've done any of our own research. We're just listening to doctors and scientists and, applying a little bit of common sense, which they say you can't do in science, but I think you can. Well, I tell you what, there was so much going on last week. We're going to have trouble. We have so many things to cover. And one of the things that we really want to cover is some of the highlights from the Republican convention. Because I don't know if you got a chance to see the Republican convention and the Democrat convention. I saw most of both of them. Now I think I may have seen all of at least the Republicans. I watched a good bit. I really did yeoman's work watching the Democrat convention. I'm telling you. So I watched it. I didn't enjoy it, but I watched it. Now, I have to say I skipped over the musical parts. I skipped the music.
You skipped those.
Yeah, I skipped the music. It was
You missed John Legend.
How could I miss John Legend? I don't know. Somehow I fast-forwarded through it, though. But, it's such a stark contrast between the two parties. And I think anybody that watched both of them, which is probably not that many people, frankly, in today's world, but anybody that watched both of them would see this really stark contrast between the two parties. The Democrats quite literally hate America. They want to remake America. They think there's something fundamentally wrong with America from its founding and that America's been a force for evil in the world since its founding. That's what the Democrats, by and large, think. The Republicans, on the other hand, it's so obvious Republicans love this country. They love the founding of this country, and they want to save this, what we have here, this form of self-government that we have, which it's so highlighted when some of the people were speaking at the Republican convention, like Maximo Alvarez, who grew up in Cuba, and to hear from him where he said at the end of his speech, and we're going to play a clip from that for you, but where he said at the end of his speech, his father told him there's nowhere else to go. America is the only place to go. And that's been, by and large, true. There are not hundreds of options for a free country to live in where you can live free and have self-government. That doesn't exist, by and large, in this world. We have it here. And somehow there's a large portion of the population here that wants to destroy that thinks that that's bad, evil, and wrong. And that is really a jaded view of things. It's not a fair look at things. So let's get to Maximo Alvarez's clip here. He had a great speech. We just clipped it up a little bit, so I want to play some of it for you.
Those false promises spread the wealth, free education, free health care, defund the police, trust the socialist state more than your family and your community. They don't sound radical to my ears. They sound familiar. And Fidel Castro was asked if he was a communist. He said he was a Roman Catholic. He knew he had to hide the truth. But the country I was born in is gone, totally destroyed. When I watch the news in Seattle, Chicago, Portland, and other cities, when I see the history being rewritten, when I hear the promises, I've heard echoes of the former life I never wanted to hear again. I see shadows I thought I had outrun. And here's what I've decided. My decision is very easy. I choose President Trump because I choose America. I choose freedom. I still hear my dad. There is no other place to go. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless America.
Oh, so powerful. I tell you, I'm sitting in here tearing up, and he was tearing up too. And you ought to listen to what he had to say because he knows.
We're back on the Morgan Streetman Show. Be careful as you're driving around out there because Hillsborough County is back in school today. So we're going to see more school buses this morning and this afternoon. And when the kids are getting on the buses with their masks on, I think that messes up your peripheral vision a little bit. So just know they can't see you as well. The bus driver's wearing a mask. So just be careful.
The new normal.
Mm-hmm.
Our favorite word. Mm-hmm. Well, all right, let's jump back into the convention because we have a lot to share with you from the Republican convention. If you didn't get to see it, you're going to want to hear these segments that we have prepared for you because we've got some of the best that I went through and pulled out of the convention speeches. And somebody we've run some clips from recently, he's suddenly become more politically active, and that's Herschel Walker, the famed running back. One of the most fit men ever to play in the NFL, and a really interesting guy, and he's really standing up big time for President Trump. And I thought some of the things that he had to say were very interesting. And, of course, the Democrats want to say that President Trump is a racist, but anybody that actually looks at what President Trump has done and the life that he's lived would know that's not true. And Herschel Walker is actually a personal friend of his for a long time. So let's hear what Herschel Walker has to say about President Trump.
It hurt my soul to hear the terrible names that people call Donald. The worst one is racist. I take it as a personal insult that people would think I've had a 37-year friendship with a racist. People who think that don't know what they're talking about. Growing up in the Deep South, I've seen racism up close. I know what it is, and it isn't Donald Trump. Just because someone loves and respects the flag, our national anthem, and our country, doesn't mean they don't care about social justice. I care about all those things. So does Donald Trump. He shows how much he cares about social justice in the black community through his actions. And his action speaks louder than stickers or slogans on a jersey. He keeps right on fighting to improve the lives of black Americans and all Americans. He works night and day. He never stops. He leaves nothing on the field. Some people don't like his style, the way he knocks down obstacles that get in the way of his goals. People on the opposing team didn't like when I ran over them either. But that's how you get the job done. I pray every night that God gives him more time. Give him 4 more years. He has accomplished so much, almost all by himself, on a constant attack. But there's still more work to be done. If you love America and want to make it better, Donald Trump is your president. He's my president, and I'm blessed to call him friend.
Wow, don't you just love the way Herschel Walker speaks? I mean, he's so plain-spoken, common sense, and direct.
He said he's lost a lot of friends over the years because of his friendship with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Or I should say after the last 4 years. It wasn't a problem until 4 years ago.
Well, and I tell you, the Republicans featured, because if you watch the Democrat convention, there were a lot of black people speaking at the Democrat convention saying how terrible America was. And so the Republicans had to show some kind of a counter message, and they had their own group of black people. And you know what's funny? After listening to the conventions, apparently black people in the country at large have decided that they like the Republican message a little bit better because those numbers are trending up. And you can understand why when you listen to some of these speakers who are just being completely honest about the situation. Next up, we've got Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, also a black man.
I think often about my ancestors who struggled for freedom. And as I think of those giants and their broad shoulders, I also think about Joe Biden, who says, if you aren't voting for me, you ain't black, who argued that Republicans would put us back in chains, who says there is no diversity of thought in the black community. Mr. Vice President, look at me. I am black. We are not all the same, sir. I am not in chains. My mind is my own. And you can't tell me how to vote because of the color of my skin.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Somebody who's thinking for themselves. and somebody who's not going to fall into the old patterns, the thought process that black people always have to vote for Democrats, because they don't. They can be free. And some black people even say there's a really good reason to vote for Republicans, like our next speaker, Clarence Henderson, who is a civil rights icon and lives in North Carolina, I believe it is now, and is head of the Frederick Douglass Institute. But he had some really interesting things to say about the historical nature of the Republican Party and how the Republican Party is the one that first empowered black people in this country, that black people were first elected as Republicans. Listen to what he had to say.
Greetings, my fellow Americans. I am Clarence Henderson. There have been movements that have changed the course of history. Among the most extraordinary was the Civil Rights Movement. 60 years ago, segregation was legal and enforced. The simple act of sitting at a lunch counter could lead to physical harm, jail time, or worse. I know from personal experience. Walking into Woolworth department store on February 2nd, 1960, I knew it was unlike any day I'd experienced before. My friends had been denied service the day before because of the color of their skin. We knew it wasn't right. But when we went back the next day, I didn't know whether I was going to come out in a vertical or prone position, in handcuffs or on a stretcher, or even in a body bag. By sitting down to order a cup of coffee, we challenged injustice. We knew it was necessary, but we didn't know what would happen. We faced down the KKK. We were cursed at and called all kinds of names. They threatened to kill us, and some of us were arrested, but it was worth it. Our actions inspired similar protests throughout the South against racial injustice. And in the end, segregation was abolished, and our country moved a step closer to true equality for all. That's what actual peaceful protest can accomplish. America isn't perfect. We're always improving. But the great thing about this country is that it's not where you come from, it's where you're going. I was born on what some would call the wrong side of the tracks. I don't even have a birth certificate. I never attended an integrated school, and am the only one out of my immediate family who graduated from college, an HBCU. I'm a military veteran and a civil rights activist. And you know what else? I'm a Republican, and I support Donald Trump. If that sounds strange, you don't know your history. It was the Republican Party that passed the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. It was a Republican Party that passed the 14th Amendment, giving black men citizenship. It was the Republican Party that passed the 15th Amendment, giving black men the right to vote. Freedom of thought is a powerful thing. There are Americans, voters all over the country, who media is trying to convince to conform to the same old Democratic talking points. You know what that'll get you? The same old results. Joe Biden had the audacity to say, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Well, to that, I say, if you do vote for Biden, you don't know history.
That's one of the best lines of the convention, I thought. I mean, what a powerful story. He's somebody who's lived it.
When did it come in time that the Democrats said the Republicans were not a party in favor of those things? How did it get twisted? How come they can't both be in favor?
When Trump became president.
Yeah, right. Well, they've been working on that for years. I mean, that's a long story for me to tell you. It goes back to the Nixon strategy, et cetera. But
for another time. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the point is the Republicans are not fundamentally racist. And if you believe that, you don't know your history. That's the point. So another thing that the Republicans featured during the convention is really their commitment to the sanctity of life. And one of the best speakers at the convention who didn't talk about racial issues was Sister Deirdre Dee Byrne. And she is a Catholic nun, and she had quite a bit to say about why she's an enthusiastic Republican. I want you to hear directly from her because this is so powerful, and we're going to talk some more about this a little bit later when we get to some of the other clips. So listen up.
We must fight against a legislative agenda that supports and even celebrates destroying life in the womb. Keep in mind, the laws we create define how we see our humanity. And we must ask ourselves, what are we saying when we go into a womb and snuff out an innocent, powerless, voiceless life? As a physician, I can say without hesitation, life begins at conception. While what I have to say may be difficult for some to hear, I am saying it because I'm not just pro-life, I'm pro-eternal life, and I want all of us to end up in heaven together someday. Which brings me to why I'm here today. Donald Trump is the most pro-life president that this nation has ever had, defending life at all stages. His belief in the sanctity of life transcends politics. President Trump will stand up against Biden-Harris, who are the most anti-life presidential ticket ever.
You know, one of the things I really like about the Republicans is they're direct. They're straightforward. They speak the truth about what they believe and the positions that they're taking. You compare that to the Democrats. Of course, the Democrats didn't say hardly anything about their actual agenda. It was all about how we've got to change this country. The country is bad. And now listen to some music by a famous person and just understand all the celebrities are behind the Democrats. And so therefore, in today's culture, you should be too. I mean, is that their argument? Is that winning any of you over? It ain't winning me over. We're going to come back and we're going to do my favorite speech of the entire convention.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. If you did not get a chance to see all of the Republican National Convention, we're going through the highlights right now with Morgan.
Well, and you know, one of the themes of the Democrat convention and Democrat politics right now is that the Republicans are racist, and they use some of these interactions with the police as evidence of that. But you know, when you dig into these stories a little bit more and you get the actual facts of the stories, kind of like the Jacob Blake story, you know, you find out there's a lot more to that story. Like, for instance, Jacob Blake had a felony warrant out for his arrest. You know what that was for? For breaking into a woman's home, sexually assaulting her while her child was in bed with her, and then stealing her car. Okay, so that's what he did. Now, if you look closely at some of the photographs, and the mainstream media will not show these to you, but I brought some close-up photos in here, and I showed them to Pat and Roxanne. Y'all hadn't seen them. You will see Jacob Blake actually had a knife in his hand. It was a kind of knife called a karambit. It's a curved knife with a hole at the end of the handle that goes like on your pinky finger. It's a very dangerous, it's deadly weapon. It's all about slicing somebody's guts open. And he was carrying that as he was walking back to his car. So you're telling me that the police were not in reasonable fear for their safety? My goodness, the man was armed. He was a felon with a warrant out for his arrest. That's exactly the type of situation where somebody will turn around and try to stab you or do something crazy. So they did the right thing. Now let's get back to the convention, because I did promise folks I want to play my favorite speech for the convention. We're going to have a tough time getting to all the clips, but this is one you got to hear. I didn't cut this one up at all. This is Jack Brewer from the Republican National Convention, and this was Morgan's favorite speech of the convention.
I'm Jack Brewer, a former three-time NFL team captain, college professor, coach, husband, son, and father. I'm also a lifelong Democrat, but I support Donald Trump. Let me be clear. I didn't come here for the popularity or the praise, the likes or the retweets. I'm here as a servant to God, a servant to the people of our nation, and a servant to our president. I grew up in Grapevine, Texas, a town that my great-grandfather was the first black man to settle as a sharecropper in 1896. My early high school experience included fighting with skinheads and being a witness in an attempted murder trial after my friend shot a skinhead in self-defense. I remember my dad's bravery when he personally stood up against a KKK rally in my town. In my house, my father taught me to back down from no one. I know what racism looks like. I've seen it firsthand. In America, it has no resemblance to President Trump. And I'm fed up with the way he's portrayed in the media, who refuse to acknowledge what he's actually done for the black community. It's confusing the minds of our innocent children. Before I left to come deliver this message, my energetic 8-year-old son, Jackson, stopped me and said, "Dad, can you please just tell everyone that all lives need to matter and that God loves everyone? In that moment, I realized that my 8-year-old had figured out what so many adults have seemed to forget. We are not as divided as our politics suggest. At some point, for the sake of our children, the policies must take priority over the personalities. So because you have an issue with President Trump's tone, you're going to allow Biden and Harris to deny our underserved black and brown children school choice? Are we so offended by the president's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," that we're going to ignore that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have collectively been responsible for locking up countless black men for nonviolent crimes? Are you going to allow the media to lie to you by falsely claiming that he said there were very fine white supremacists in Charlottesville? He didn't say that. It's a lie. And ignore the so-called Black Lives Matter organization that openly, on their website, calls for the destruction of the nuclear family. My fellow Americans, our families need each other. We need black fathers in the homes with their wives and children. The future of our communities depend on it. I'm blessed to be able to run inner-city youth programs and to also teach in prisons across America. The inmates in my federal prison program literally receive days off their sentence just for attending my class. And that's thanks to President Donald Trump and his First Step Act. President Trump cared about these Americans and their families, even when so many others had left them behind and had written them off. I'm forever grateful for President Trump for that. He endures relentless attacks, and so do many of us, like myself, who support him. But my mama always told me, when the Lord starts blessing, the devil starts messing. This convention marks a time to celebrate our history. Republicans are the party that freed the slaves and the party that put the first black men and women in Congress. It's the party of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And now, Tim Scott and Donald Trump. Our president has made incredible strides to end mass incarceration and give unprecedented opportunities for black in America to rise. America, let this election be a call for all God's people who are called by his name to humble ourselves and pray together and to seek his face and to turn from our wicked ways. Then he will hear us from heaven, and he will forgive our sins, and he will heal our land. Amen, and God bless America.
Powerful speech. Powerful speech. And so much truth in that one short speech. And you can just hear the fact that these speakers love our country. They love what it stands for. Well, there was a lot of other lines. I mean, there were so many speakers at the convention. There were so many we could highlight. There were some great lines. And one of the great lines of the convention, I thought, switching gears slightly, came from former Director of National Intelligence, Rick Grinnell. And I thought you'd like to hear this little line because, you know, we love him and some of what he had to do while he was acting DNI, where he released and declassified documents and otherwise stood up for this administration against the intelligence community. But listen to this line. This is classic.
A return to the Biden way of thinking means America gives the radical terrorist regime in Tehran a plane load of cash in the middle of the night. Well, you see, President Trump also sent an aircraft in the middle of the night to deal with Iran. But that plane was on a different mission. An airstrike to take out the head of Iran's terror machine who plotted the deaths of Americans.
I just love that. President Trump also sent a plane to Iran. That's a great line. All right, well, let's jump into some of what President Trump had to say, because he also had some great lines. And I'll tell you, his speech went on for about an hour, and I think it was about an hour and 20 minutes. And I think he was demonstrating his stamina, because you compare it to Joe Biden, gave one of the shortest presidential acceptance speeches ever at a convention. He could barely, I don't think Biden cracked 26 minutes in his speech, but the president went on for well over an hour and had some great lines. Now let's hear, because we're circling back to some of the key themes of the Republican Party, and that is the importance of God and religion in our country. Let's hear from President Trump.
We are one movement, one people, one family, and one nation under God. And we don't take the beautiful word God out of our Pledge of Allegiance, do we? You don't do it. They did it twice. They did it twice. Then they say, well, we didn't mean that. Oh, I see. I was listening once. They said, that's straight. You don't know what it is. What happened? What happened? They did it on purpose. They did it twice. That's where they're coming from. You can be fools, and you can be fooled, but that's where they're coming from. So don't be surprised. But they're not going to get there. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to let our country be destroyed by a bunch of nut jobs.
When I hear him say the word twice, I laugh, just the emphasis. And for a second, I say, is that President Trump imitating Alec Baldwin, imitating him?
Well, it might be, because we know it consumes a lot of media. But listen to what he had to say, and I apologize. I know I'm kind of rushing through the clips here, but they only give me 1 hour, so I got to get through all the stuff I want to get through. But listen to what President Trump has to tell folks about the Democrat agenda, because there is an agenda there, even though the Democrats didn't bother to mention what it was.
At the Democrat convention, you barely heard a word about their agenda. But that's not because they don't have one. It's because their agenda is the most extreme set of proposals ever put forward by a major party nominee.
So they don't want to tell you where they're actually coming from, and that's why you didn't hear any of that during their actual convention. But they want to have a Marxist revolution in this country and fundamentally change America from the great force for good that it has been in the world.
The far left wants to coerce you into saying what you know to be false and scare you out of saying what you know to be true.
And so many of us are seeing that, and we're even experiencing that in our own lives. This control, this thought control that's trying to be applied to us. You can't think this, you can't think that, you got to think this way about this issue, you got to think Republicans are racist. You can't say that a riot's a riot, because that's racist. And if you dare to say that, now you're a racist, and you'll be canceled. And we see that. We saw that playing out after the convention with some of the convention attendees who were trying to walk back to their hotels, and they're being attacked by people for having attended the Republican convention.
That was peaceful.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, that's right. You can't say that they were attacked, right, because it was all peaceful. Well, listen, you want to hear some more truth? Here's some more truth from President Trump. This is what Biden and Harris really want to bring about.
If the left gains power, they will demolish the suburbs, confiscate your guns, and appoint justices who will wipe away your Second Amendment and other constitutional freedoms. Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism.
He is, and I'll tell you what, a Trojan horse for socialism, and socialism is a Trojan horse for communism, because that's how it always goes. Socialism is like the kinder, gentler form of communism, because they haven't yet told you yet that they're going to start eliminating people who disagree with them. But you could see that. Actions speak louder than words, and you could see that playing out all across America. You saw a sitting U.S. senator get attacked walking back to his hotel. That was Senator Rand Paul. It is appalling that this is allowed to happen in our cities. I mean, you and I should be able to walk in any city in America and feel safe. But today, in today's world, you can't. And you put on a red hat, and you're probably going to get attacked in one of the cities, and that's wrong. Well, we had one more clip, which I thought was also a great line from President Trump, and this is true. The Chinese desperately want Joe Biden to win the election because President Trump has stood up to the Chinese and he's fought back against all of the things that they've tried to take from our country. So I love this line that President Trump said at the speech.
Joe Biden's agenda is made in China. My agenda is made in the USA.
Well, you can hear the crowd loved it as well. And, you know, we had so many more things to cover because where's this violence going? We could see a little bit of where it's going in Portland over the weekend, where a President Trump supporter who was moving away from other individuals was shot, and they said he was killed. No, he was murdered on the streets of Portland. He wasn't attacking anybody. He was moving away, and he was murdered in cold blood.
Well, Morgan, thank you for that. I'm a busy mom, busy doing it all, and I got to get caught up on the Republican National Convention.
Yeah, we give you about 30 minutes, and we catch you up on pretty much the best highlights of it. There were a lot of other great speeches that we just don't have time to cover them all. There were a lot of other great lines, too, but I think we hit some of the highlights of it. And I'll tell you a big highlight. Now we're going to go out there because we got to move on. Unfortunately, I'd love to tell you some more about what happened in Portland. 4chan's already tracking that guy down. We already know who the murderer was, and you can see it for yourself in the pictures. And, folks, if you're not checking out sites like Zero Hedge and Citizen Free Press, and you're wondering where some of this information is coming from, you're certainly not going to get it from ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and their ilk. You won't hear any of this on those stations because their job is to hide the truth from you, not to bring the truth to you. Now, here's some more interesting stuff going on you may or may not have heard about. This was big news last week, and that's Elon Musk had a press conference to debut his new technology, which is essentially trying to merge your brain with a computer, or at one point, as he says, merge it with your cell phone, which, wow, what an exciting thought that is, right? You talk about putting it on silent. Well, now you can't because it's merged up with your brain. But he brought out some pigs, to demonstrate, hey, it works in the pigs. He brought out 3 pigs. One of them supposedly, and I just say supposedly because who knows, right? One of them supposedly had the active Neuralink technology implanted in their brain. And you'll hear a bunch of beeps and boops during his little talk here, and that indicates apparently the feedback coming from the machine.
High energy pig. All right. Gertrude, thanks for coming out.
Pig's name is Gertrude.
So what the beeps you're hearing are real-time signals from the Neuralink in Gertrude's head. So this Neuralink connects to neurons that are in her snout. So whenever she snuffles around and touches something with her snout, that sends out neural spikes, which are detected here. And so on the screen, you can see each of the spikes from the 1,024 electrodes. And then if she snuffles around, touches her snout in the ground, or you kind of feed her some food, pigs love food, then you can see the neurons will fire much more than when you're not touching the snout.
Okay, we're going to cut that clip just a little bit because while it is an interesting clip with all the beeping and booping, we just are only going to have time to give you a flavor because I want to get to some of the other things that Elon Musk had to say about this supposed new technology. He has a surgery robot that he's already supposedly developed, and you're going to be able to go in and get this put in like one day. And then what he refers to it as is it's similar to a Fitbit in your skull.
In a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. We feel confident about getting the link procedure, the installation of a link, done in under an hour.
Under an hour.
So you can basically go in the morning and leave the hospital in the afternoon. And it can be done without general anesthesia.
So this surgery takes less than a day. It's outpatient, and it's done without general anesthesia. And he's even went on to talk about, and I apologize for that clip, the noise level was very low on that clip, but he even went on to talk about the fact that, it was going to be gotten down to a price level of about $2,000.
Okay, why are we talking about how little it costs is what he's trying to say and how easy the procedure is without really knowing the ramifications of it?
Oh, because everybody's going to get one. That's why. And here it comes. We're going to talk about some of the ramifications, or he is. I mean, listen to what he says is his goal. Now, this is his publicly stated goal.
What's our goal? Our goal is to solve important spine and brain problems with a seamlessly implanted device. So you want to have a device that you can basically put in your head and feel and look totally normal, but it solves some important problem in your brain or spine. And the reality is that almost everyone over time will develop brain and spine problems. These range from minor to very severe, but if you live long enough, everyone's going to basically have some kind of neurological disorder. And these range, from memory loss to brain damage. But the thing that's important to appreciate is that an implantable device can actually solve these problems. And I think a lot of people don't quite realize that. But all of these, all of your senses, your sight, hearing, feeling, pain, these are all electrical signals sent by neurons to your brain. And if you can
listen to that. So now he's building a device that can affect those signals. So could it change what you see? Could it change what you hear? Could it change what you feel? Could it increase your pain as well as decrease your pain?
Could it change how you think?
I mean, there you go.
What if it malfunctions?
It's just electrical signals, right? Now, you want to get really science fiction-y, and I have to say, by the way, Elon Musk has got to be the worst presenter of the smartest man in the world that I've ever heard.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, he's terrible. Somebody bring back Steve Jobs, okay? Then I'll definitely buy one of these. But we got to get to these last two clips before we run out of time here, because this is the real meat of the out there. Now, listen to what he has to say about what this technology can do from a science fiction perspective.
Another question from Twitter. Will you be able to save and replay memories in the future?
Oh. Total Recall.
Yes, I think in the future you will be able to save and replay memories. I mean, this is obviously sounding increasingly like a Black Mirror episode. But, well, I guess they're pretty good at predicting. But yeah, essentially, if you have a whole brain interface, everything that's encoded in memory, you could upload. You could basically store your memories as a backup and restore the memories. Then ultimately, you could potentially download them into a new body or into a robot body.
Ooh.
The future is going to be weird.
Oh, doesn't that sound fun? Nothing I wanted to be more than just a robot. But now, we're really getting to the coup de grace now. We're really getting to what he says this technology can do. This is our last clip. We got to jump to it or we're going to run out of time.
Where you have an AI extension of yourself.
An AI extension of yourself.
Limbic system and cortex, and having that symbiosis be good, such that the future of the world is controlled by the combined will of the people of Earth.
Listen.
That's obviously going to be the future that we want, presumably, if it's the sum of our collective will, and so I think it's going to be important from an existential threat standpoint to achieve a good AI symbiosis, and that's what I think might be the most important thing that a device like this achieves.
Now, who do you think's going to be adding up the sum of our collective will and just telling us, and we're all just going to take it for granted, right? Because the AI told us this is the sum of humanity's collective will, and hey, if you don't like it, it can just zap your brain a little bit and change your mind. This is the singularity. This is what people like him and other people who are right on the cusp of technology want to bring into effect for the world. And I think you're going to have to decide fairly soon if this is what you want in your life. Do you want to merge with a computer? Do you want to be uploaded to the cloud? I know I don't. I've watched enough movies to know I don't want to do that. Folks, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been a great week. We'll see you next week. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.